What's up, people? This is my testimony. Testimony might sound weird for some people, especially those who know me and who are watching this. They might be thinking, but testimony? But what do you mean? You are already raised a Christian. And well, that's true. However, I was born in a very Christian, like not strongly Christian, but my parents they did believe in God, but they were kind of like easygoing with it. We didn't go to church every single Sunday. We went to church like only on the big events, like Easter or Christmas. I was raised Christian. Like I was raised to obey Jesus, to love Jesus, that he's our friend and our God and Savior. However, when I became a teenager, I was kind of rebellious, which should be a surprise because we've all been there probably. My first doubts started creeping in, especially because I went to a school where the people are a bit smart, you know what I mean? But I was the dumbest one. And however, in this school, I had my religion teacher. He was an atheist, okay? Please don't ask me why or how this is possible. He was an atheist. And the thing is, I don't know why he decided to become a religious, teacher of religion class, but yeah, I had him in religion class. And he started giving us psychology instead of Jesus. So he was talking about the Bible, but he wasn't speaking of a Christian perspective, but a psychology perspective. So for example, he would always cherry pick those verses in the Bible that fit his atheistic narrative, and that would basically put Jesus into a frame of, he isn't my God, but he was a good teacher and he was a very wise guy. Why did the people look at me like that? Anyway, they were staring at me like, right? Anyway, so probably I'm on the mountains. Probably they've never seen a YouTuber like me before, so they've probably never seen a guy with a camera. I mean, for example, when one of my classmates started asked the teacher once, she asked the teacher, I've read that Jesus is coming a second time, so is he? And then he started completely going into a different topic. He didn't really answer the question. And yeah, basically he would manipulate people. And unfortunately, I fell into his trap. I started having kind of doubts, and he started straight up lying about the Bible. For example, when he said homosexuality was a sin, that it was written in the letter of the Romans to Greece, and he thought that the letter of Romans in the Bible is a letter from Romans to Greece, which is completely wrong, because it was St. Paul who wrote these letters to the Romans. The Romans didn't write this to the Greek people, because his argument was basically, because homosexuality was so present in Greece, the Romans wrote them a letter and declared it as sin, so that the Greek people would stop being homosexual and would fear the Lord. But that's just not the reality. Like, he just straight up lied, or he just straight up got it flat out wrong. Anyway, so long story short, I started having doubts because I myself didn't know the scriptures. I was a teenager. I didn't really read the Bible. And I started doubting Jesus. And I was thinking to myself, okay, maybe he's got a point. And maybe it's not all God and woo-woo and sin. And that's not really, there isn't a God. So I kind of followed in his footsteps and started questioning things. I started doubting the Bible, and that it was really written by people who are inspired by the Holy Spirit. And then I was introduced to, you guys probably know him, Osho. Now Osho was a guru. Like, I started reading a lot. Even though I started doubting Jesus, I was someone who still read books. Like, I read a lot of books. The people in my school didn't really like me because I was a very annoying guy, so, which I completely understand. I completely understand that. I was a very annoying person. I wasn't really fun to be around with. So no one really liked me at school. So what I did in my breaks was, while everyone was going out and going to eat, grab something to eat, you know, I'll see always these friend groups. They'll always leave, and I was the only one in class, or one of the very few people in class. And I'll always go to the library downstairs, and I'll pick a book and I'll start reading. So at some day, I read about Osho, who is a Hindu guru, and he is very anti-Christian. Like, he was very, very anti-God, anti-Jesus, and he thought, like, he always said, God is the biggest lie of human history. He would claim that. And I started believing him, and I started reading his books, and I became like him, completely anti-Christian. Not like, I didn't like straight up hate all Christians, but I hated like religion, and I started hating, like, you know, going to church and all that sinful talk stuff. 4 years later, I was in a big depression. I was having panic attacks sometimes. My heart would start racing like crazy. I had suicidal thoughts every day. Okay, every single day. And every day, which is basically atheism in a nutshell. Atheism in a nutshell is answering the question why you shouldn't just end it all right now. This is atheism, because atheists believe that all this was an accident. And if all this was an accident, then guess what, detective? Your life is an accident. And God says, no, your life is not an accident. I created you with purpose. I know the plans that I have set for you. Before you were born, I set those plans. He says this in the Bible. I didn't have that, so I was having suicidal thoughts every single day, and I kid you not. I'm not exaggerating. I became a fitness trainer. I started working. I basically quit school and I started working. And in the gym, I was very depressed. Sometimes I just couldn't work properly because I would have these panic attacks and these depression and these suicidal thoughts all the time. Until one day, out of nowhere, I was scrolling through Instagram. All of a sudden, I was looking for like tips to help me. Like, I wanted to take care of my mental health and get these suicidal thoughts, keep them at bay. What I did was I was looking for very spiritual stuff. I was also listening to Sadhguru. You might know him. He's a very famous guy. And I was listening to very like Hinduism, Buddhism. I didn't even consider reading the Bible or like watching a video about Jesus or something. One day I was scrolling through Instagram and all of a sudden I see a picture of Jesus. Without warning, without me searching for him. It was kind of like he searched for me, which is true, because God searches for you, not you for him. I saw his picture and I immediately started crying. My cry wasn't because of sadness, it was because of relief. Because I felt a deep peace and relief inside my soul, as if I just found something I've been looking for my entire life. But I was still at work. That's the cool part. I was still at the gym, so I couldn't just look at him for for one more second because I would just burst into tears and my eyes would turn red, and I would have to trade people. I've had to be in the gym around the people. Hello. And I couldn't do this with my tears in my eyes, you know what I mean? So I stopped immediately. But as I told myself, if I was back home, I would listen to what Jesus has to say. And one thing that you need to realize is that back in those times, it was like 2023. Yeah, in November 2023, I became Christian again. Before that, I considered Islam. Why? Because Andrew Tate was a Muslim. You know, and I was listening to Andrew Tate and I kind of saw him as a god. And I heard that he became a Muslim, right? And because of that, that was my first catalyst, my first motivator to go back to religion. So I started reading about Islam and what Islam teaches. And the more I studied Islam, the more I was like, thank you, but no thank you, okay? I didn't want to become a Muslim. I wasn't okay with Muhammad and his lifestyle. So, and then this happened where I coincidentally saw Jesus's post, or a post about Jesus. When I was home finally, in the evening, I watched the video. So there was this guy and he would read healing prayers. Okay, prayers that were meant to heal you. And oh my goodness, when I started hearing them, he started reading from the Bible. And I couldn't stop myself. I cried like a freaking baby. I cried like I've never cried before. In fact, I have never in my life, in my adult life, cried like this. I was usually the type of guy who could control himself, but back then I couldn't control myself and I just started bursting into tears. Everyone's looking at me, bro. What is going on? And the one verse that absolutely struck me like a lightning bolt was somewhere in John 14. I think it was verse 27, but I'm not exactly sure. You know, where Jesus says that peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. I give you not as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, nor let them be afraid. This verse completely shook me. And I was thinking to myself, yes, you're right. How many times did I try to find peace? Yet nothing fulfilled me in this world except Jesus. And then Jesus came. And all of a sudden, while I'm crying, sitting on my couch crying, it was night, it was completely dark outside, I felt a presence in my apartment. I felt this presence. Someone is in my apartment right now. And I knew immediately that was Jesus. I just knew it. And I started crying even more. And I immediately felt convicted. And I was like, I'm so sorry for all that I've committed. After 4 years of being in rebellion, I finally, gave up and started coming back to Jesus. And I said, I'm sorry for all I've done. I'm sorry for all these years I doubted you. I'm sorry for all these years that I've wasted and I didn't even think about you. And Jesus was there like, it's fine, come back to me. I was hesitant at first. I didn't want to go back because I looked at Jesus and I had the same reaction. I kid you not, guys. I had the same reaction that Peter had on the boat with Jesus. I looked at him and said, go away from me, for I'm a horrible person. And I asked Jesus, he wouldn't move. He wouldn't just go away. No, he was still there. And he was still telling me, come back anyway. And I was like, But why? Like, how can you forgive me? I thought you'd be completely furious with me. How can you forgive me after all I've done? It's not like you need me. And his reaction was just, Robert, I don't care about your past. Of course, it was bad what you did. You sinned. But I want you to come back anyways. Because you're my son. You're my beloved son. And I'm your God and I'm your father. And you're my beloved child. I want you back. You will be my God until my very last breath. I said this to him. I've decided to, after reading the Bible and studying it carefully, I decided to start my own YouTube channel where we'll be talking about Bible stuff, Jesus, about religion, about the church, etc. We will be covering all this together. We'll be making live streams where you can ask me your questions. Kid you not, guys, when I started going back to Jesus, all of my illnesses and sicknesses went away. So for example, I had gastritis. Now gastritis is when you eat something and then immediately your stomach hurts because it's some kind of inflammation in the stomach. I'm not exactly sure, but you know, it has to do with inflammation in your stomach. And no matter what you eat, you always get a stomach ache. And that was true for me. I kid you not. I ate bread, normal bread, or I ate one piece of rice and I'll immediately get stomach ache. It went away. I had depression, gone. My suicidal thoughts, gone. As if I never had some. And my heart problems, like my panic attacks, everything went away because Jesus took everything from me. Welcome to my channel. If you want to learn the Bible in detail, because I'm a very detail-oriented guy, I love going into details. So if you love going deep into topics, definitely you want to subscribe to this channel because this is what we'll be doing every single week. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Budite ca o ptițe nebeske verni, budite ca o ptițe nebeske u Hristu slobodni, u Hristu slobodni.